art to remembering why you do this and connecting to that aspiration that's living in your heart. I think it's important to be able to articulate it for yourself so that it resonates that part of you that wants to do the Dharma, because various motivations live in us. That's being human. I mean, I can't speak for anyone else, but I've done this for a while, and various motivations live in me, and not all of them want to sit down and meditate, and not all of them want to be generous, and not all of them are interested in, meeting life as a mature person. So the practice of vision is centering that motivation that we want to center. We're feeding those motivations that, as far as we can see at this time, most deeply serve. So when we do this, as I said, connect with our actual desire for practice, it will be more sustainable, more focused. Of course, you aren't and should never be a Zen robot. So inspiration comes and goes. And our desire evolves as we evolve. Our vision of what we're doing changes as we change. Previous motivations make themselves obsolete, actually. And we, as the one doing the meditation, actually disappear. If you're successful, the person who's doing the meditation right now won't actually be there in quite the same way in 10 years. So something else will motivate that person. Over time, energy gathers in our motivation to practice, and it begins to outshine desires of less weight in our heart. Outshine desires of less weight in our own heart. And what that means is it becomes easier and easier and more second nature and more integrated into who and what we are, this essential desire for awakening. However you would word that. You could say we're sublimating desire. There's this basic force in us to want to go in one direction or another, and we make it sublime by channeling it into what actually truly matters to you, what actually truly moves you. So this is the thing, that you can trust your deepest motivation, actually. I think, and take this as maybe this is a, what's it called? A theory, proposition, that any deep desire of the heart is actually supported by Zazen, is the practice of Zazen. Are there any fundamental desires of the heart that fall outside the scope of truth, beauty, and goodness? I like those Platonic categories: truth, beauty, and goodness. So in a practice session, starting with intention, we prime the mind. So much of what makes Buddhist teaching different than other systems of teaching and practice is intentionality is centered. In a way, that's all we're doing. We're becoming more wakeful and more discerning, and we are becoming conscious about how we use the power of intention. So you prime the mind, and I really like this image of placing a seed into the ground of consciousness. You could think of it like this. Let's say one day you go to work and you think as you're driving to work, oh, I'm going to get some ice cream when I get off work. Right? And you think that, and you have some memories and some fantasies. And then you forget about that in the busyness of your day. But then when the day ends, that intention you planted just pops up. Oh yeah, I was going to get some ice cream, right? You remember. So this is what we're harnessing. We're harnessing that. For example, one of mine is may generosity arise in my heartstream, because sometimes I forget. I was out to dinner earlier this evening, and my girlfriend's friend just spontaneously paid for the bill, and I was so moved, and I renewed my interest in priming the intention towards generosity. So we give rise to the intention internally or externally. If you're at home, if you can say your intentions out loud, of course, human cultures have always known that when you speak something aloud, it's more powerful because it's always witnessed at some level. You give rise to the intention and it sparks an energy. And so in the beginning of your session, you spark the energy with the may I be kind to all beings, whatever it is. And the gross form of the energy fades, right? Thought goes away, but it launches us into the sitting with a measure of clarity nonetheless. It's a whole nother talk and topic going beyond intentionality and the realm of not knowing. But in general, as beings who dwell in the relative plane, intentionality is such a potent force. I suggested you ask, who is this for? And that asking is a practice of discovery and a renewal and enlargement of the scope of what we're doing. It's a reminder of interconnection. And to just ask, who is this for? And see what comes up as you ask that. Who is this for? Sometimes people are concerned that they can be doing the practice for a self-centered reason. You could see that that is a problem. And that, in a way, it's a problem that will undo itself. That will be the very stuff of our path, is looking at how self-centered intention becomes an obstacle. But on a more fundamental level, you can't actually do this practice selfishly. You actually can't, because interconnection is true whether we're aware of it or not. We're each a bead on the great mala, and there's no way to not be touched by beads all around. So this practice of who is this for is just to ask and to remind us of our interdependent context. The next thing I mentioned was space or openness. A lot of practices, we can see them leading us to spaciousness or openness. And on the ground, that's often how it is. We train for a while, and when we've developed our practice sufficiently, spaciousness is the quality of our meditation. But we can start there because it's already true. We are already utterly dwelling in space. We are always living in an ocean of sky. Always. Jim Harrison, the poet, said, we walk on the bottom of an ocean of sky. So we live in this ocean of sky, and to actually know that is quite liberating. Recovery of space has been, for in my practice, one of the primary fruits. And I mean this as experientially as you can get. I can recall some of my first session, I literally rediscovered the space of my being. It was as if it had been partitioned off, and I lived in a kind of constipated or contracted sense of myself. And then through those retreats, space opened up, and that's everything. Because that's the breathing room for our being to arise in. That's the ability to let things flow. It can only flow if there's room for it to flow. There are so many messages that come our way about what we can do or what we shouldn't do or what we can buy or practice that will improve our lives and make us better humans or parents or artists or lovers or capitalists. And here's one more that I have a lot of confidence in, and that is cultivate an awareness of space and openness. This means that throughout your day, notice that there's a habitual fixation on objects. Whether it's an object of thought or an object of form, the mind is habitually fixating on objects, and we ignore space. We ignore the ambiance of a room. We ignore that we live in an ocean of sky. We live in boxes indoors. Most of us live in tight indoor boxes. Our lives revolve around objects, and that's been a factor in evolving forth a cramped inner and outer world. So this is as simple as beginning to really notice and appreciate space. Don't wait for it someday when your practice gets good. Just do it. Just start. It's fantastic. In both in Zen and in Dzogchen, it's recommended. In fact, in some places, you have no choice. You will get reprimanded if you sit with your eyes closed. And this is one of the responsibilities I've taken on as a teacher, is to keep nagging people to learn to meditate with their eyes open. There's lots of good reasons, but one of them is that when you meditate with your eyes open, you have an awareness of space. It's just right there. So after space, I invited you to select your object of focus, which I'm sure is a very, very familiar thing to you. And I like to call that presence. In the context of practice, we appreciate and we amplify presence. It's not something we make. The world is already presence. You tune into the feeling of the flow of your breath, but it's already present. Your body is already present. Something existing and the awareness of it are always the same thing. Sometimes this is referred to as like original mind or natural awareness, to point out that we don't have to do presence. It's a given. But we're appreciating presence and we're amplifying it. I got this image recently that has been really resonant for me about what we're doing with presence. You could use the word attention or awareness as an equivalent. Presence is like a vine, like a wild vine that instinctively is reaching for the sun, right? It's going towards what will bring us light. Our attention is always going towards what we think it thinks will nourish us. But like a vine, it latches onto things. On its way towards the sun, it gets wound up around things. And what we're doing with that instinct to grab onto objects is we decouple it from objects. We unlatch our attention from the normal things it's fixated on, thoughts and fantasies and body sensations. And when we do so, we begin to discover that presence, attention, is already a light. It's already a light. It was obscuring itself by grasping onto things. But your own mind is already a light. You could call it a spiritual sun, even. It has a warmth. It is a life-giving force. Another image, so the first image is the unlatching of presence from things so that presence can really come into the fullness of its own nature. Another thing that's been very helpful for me is to think of presence as something that you are making yourself a vessel for. Awareness does not belong to you. You do not have consciousness. True, I don't know what you're conscious of, just like you don't know what I'm conscious of. We each are dwelling in our own world of consciousness. It's more true to say that consciousness is something that's shining through and living through us, even though that too is just a metaphor. There is an image from Dzogchen teaching of placing a lit candle in a hollow doll. Placing a lamp in a hollow doll. In this way, when we release the sense that awareness is something we are doing with our mind, it can shine and reveal itself all the more fully. We may very well be doing intentional thinking, right, and daydreaming, and then we try to get conscious that we're doing that. But awareness is never something we do. We just can unlatch it from particular things, or maybe temporarily place it on one thing or another. So consider presence as something that is coming through you. There's a level at which you can actually appreciate this as a service to the universe. You may have heard some of those teachings like it is through the human being that the universe is aware of itself. Right? That's literally true. That's literally true. There is no world, there is no experienced a world apart from awareness. So the more awareness dawns in us, the more rich and there the world is, the more saturated in presence our life is. Kind of a deep level of service that we are a vessel for presence to shine through. The next aspect I talked about, I like to call happeningness. But basically because the word impermanence is kind of dead, and we tend to think impermanence means there's some stuff here now that's going to go away later. And so let's not get too attached to that stuff that's going to go away. Sometimes that's how we read the teachings of impermanence in Buddhism. But actually, these teachings are talking about how life is utterly vibrant. How life is utterly vibrant. So we don't have to look at impermanence sentimentally, or things are here now or gone later. What impermanence means is that everything you're experiencing is completely vibrating and alive. It's a dance. I had invited you to notice space as the background that doesn't move. And that space is not separate from presence. When you're aware of that, let's call it the still point, that unmoving openness, the movement of things becomes all the more apparent. It seems like something it's helpful for us to tune into. We hear teachings, everything changes, and somehow we take that abstractly, but that means everything changes. Everything changes moment by moment. The experienced world arises fresh. It's not a metaphor. When we start to sit in this union of movement and stillness, of activity and presence, it's basically the death of boredom. I can't say there's been a ton of fruits of my practice, but one of the fruits I can say is I haven't been bored in about 10 years. Because when we realize that the moment is entirely alive, there's just no way to be bored. Everything is shimmering at a subtle level. In the chants, they say things like the stone woman gets up dancing, or the wooden man starts to sing. That's this image or something that we thought was in stasis, something that we thought was just kind of there and dead and ho-hum, is no longer the case. The universe is pure creativity. And so we sit here and witness the essence of existence unfolding before our eyes. That's Zazen. You sometimes read about people who spend, decades in a cave, and you think, God, wow, that lady must have had some serious trauma to want to just go meditate for 30 years. But actually, when you really get to this level in your meditation, it's profoundly rich. It's not that they had nothing better to do. It's that they saw it's all right here, the liveliness and the juice of life. It also is, let's say, therapeutic or healing, because the more you open up happeningness, change on this deep level, it will thaw your body and emotions. We hold frozen mental notions of our bodies and frozen mental notions of our own characters and our own capacities. And we hold those, and we actually have a practice of holding them that we can make conscious. We carry these fixed ideas about ourselves and our life from day to day. We renew them, and we can make it conscious how we do that. When we start to see through those, we begin to thaw. And this is where deep healing in the mind and in the body can happen. It was a Koryu Osaka Roshi, one of our lineage ancestors, who said that when you have deep insight, many sicknesses will tend to go away. And I experienced this. I had severe IBS for most of my life. And then at a certain point in my practice, it just went away in tandem with opening up to a deeper level of happeningness in the body. There's also the story of Mumon Yamada Roshi, who was Shodo Harada Roshi's teacher. And he, during World War II, was a training monk. And he had bad TB, I think. And he was a very strong practitioner. And he was in a sickbed, and they thought he was going to die, but he was just meditating. And he had a deep awakening, and his sickness went away. You can find a poem he wrote about that. So happeningness, either whether it's just the vibrancy of life coming back in or the thawing of a fixed notion of what we are, it's a blessing. It's a blessing. And it's not separate from this space that I've been talking about. They come together. What doesn't move and what allows everything to move and movement are really an interdependency. So I'm going to skip one of my steps for time's sake. The last thing I mentioned is a practice that's become really meaningful to me, and I work with it in different ways. And I call it animated by mystery. Because a very powerful and I think beautiful question is to ask, what is animating me? I first worked on this as a koan with Jogen Roshi as, what is alive? And you're not asking like in the nonviolent communication sense of like, what's alive for me? What's really meaningful? You know, that has its place. It's related to the vision I was talking about earlier. This is a question, a very fundamental question. It's asking what is alive? What is animating my body and mind at this very moment? By what power do your eyes see and your ears hear and your heart beat? What is this force that is living through you? And we don't ask philosophically. Of course, you can do that. We ask as a spark of wonder. To answer is not the point. To actually spark the curiosity is to invite us into, first of all, the fact that we do not know. We do not know what is animating us. Yet we are alive. Yet there is awareness. It's actually another way you can go about this is start your meditation sessions like this. Start by sparking curiosity. What is aware through me? What is this mind? So that the meditation is in that ambiance of what a wonder it is to simply be conscious. This ordinary wonder. Kind of touch beneath the ordinary chattering mind to the basic sense of presence and feel into that mystery. You and I are not doing that presence. It cannot be reduced to a bunch of chemicals in a brain. But what is it? One of the koans that was standard in Zen curriculum was, it goes something like this: Shakyamuni Buddha and Maitreya Buddha, that's the future Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha and Maitreya Buddha are the servants of another. Who is that other? That's the koan you sit with as yourself, right? I am the servant of another. Who is that other? In other words, what are we meaning when we say and think my life? What do we actually mean by that? Maybe I mean like what's inside the skin bag, like everything inside is my life. Or maybe I mean the thoughts inside my mind, whatever that is. Or maybe I mean the material things that belong to me. But you can inquire deeper. What does it actually mean for something to belong to me? What does it mean for, a car to belong to me is one level, but what does it mean for thought to belong to me? What does it mean for awareness to belong to me? Whose life is it? Dogen Zenji said, Zazen is an offering of the self to the self. Zazen is an offering of ourselves to ourselves. And his teacher told him that the thing that distinguishes Zazen from ordinary meditation is that it's based on compassion and that its point is to reduce self-clinging. Its point is truth and beauty and goodness. And it's the practice of that and a catalyst for that. One of the things I hope from some of the instructions that I'm reminding myself of and sharing with you is that it can be the practice of these things rather than simply a path to these things. It's the practice of truth, beauty, and goodness. It can be the practice of space, the practice of wonder. I'm going to end with a poem. And this poem is by Traktung Yeshe Dorje, who is a teacher in the Midwest. And the name of this poem is simply number 12. Number 12. Love was never elsewhere, and when I stopped calling everything that was not love by the name of love, there was love right where it had been all along. Love was never elsewhere, and when I stopped calling everything that was not love by the name of love, there was love right where it had been all along. The lover of love owns nothing, and even that she longs to give away. The intellectual tries to figure out the percentage of profit on this bargain. The percentage is not good. In a secret place hidden before mind is a space without measure. Bright with birthlessness, it is pure presence. The moment of realization is a pinprick of light shining through the dark. Devotees burn the world to ash in that brightness, and in the remains they find a jewel. Even giving this away, they sing a song of the empty heart. All of it makes for bad business. All of it makes for unborn joy. This is the path of all loss, no gain. Who wants that? Who wants to give up the great mantra, what about me? Who wants to give up the great mantra, what about me? Love is radiance, non-self-referencing brightness. Self-concern is the occluded dullness of love. Love is not sense-making. Love is not relationship. Relationship is a subset of love. Logic is a subset of awareness. Appearances are a subset of awareness. Relationship as love is all give with no center from which give is given. Love was never elsewhere, and when I stopped calling everything that was not love by the name of love, there was love right where it had been all along. I find that a an inspiring poem of what might be possible in this practice. So thank you for listening. That's what I wanted to share with you tonight.